Trust is a separate entity from the church whose purpose is to raise money to keep this marvellous building standing and in good condition and to ensure it's here for generations to follow. It's been here a long time and our objective is to make sure that remains the case for future generations. We are separate from the church and don't fund any of its activities. We just keep this beautiful place here and try to help keep it to top condition. Can I just ask a little bit of for a show of hands? If you are here because of an email you received from the Historical and Archaeological Society, can you just stick a hand up, please? Thank you. Did you see a poster around the town? Right. Did you see it online on Facebook or social media? Right. Okay, so that's about it. Thank you. We're trying to work out which publicity strand is effective and how to reach a big number of people. So thank you for that. We're privileged to have Andrew Zielinski with us this evening. He no doubt will tell us much more about himself. I know he's a stonemason, and I know that he has come a long way to be with us tonight from Deepers, Somerset, or thereabouts.
You offered me money.
It was only a little bit. But thank you. There's enough of you here to more than meet the modest demands this man has made for us. So it looks like you've done a duty in part. We will actually have made a worthwhile contribution to the trust tonight. So thank you very much indeed for that. Andrew's written 2 books, which there are copies of. I've seen you brought them with him over there. One is called Stonemason, and I've read it and I really enjoyed reading. I've read both of them. I really enjoyed the Stonemason. It's got little vignettes in it. It's not an autobiography, but it's got little vignettes in it of his experiences, which are always entertaining and sometimes very amusing. And he talks quite a lot about the evolution of stonemasonry down the centuries, using examples that he's worked on in various places. It's a thoroughly enjoyable read, and I would recommend it. Church going, he's doing a bit his version of the Oasis comeback tour. He's touring the country giving variants of this talk, like his recent talk, which has just come out and made that.
Yeah, the entrance fee's less than Oasis. But,
Well, it's just free.
yeah, I think, yeah.
But again, that's a very interesting book. I thought I knew a reasonable amount about churches. Reading that book reminded me of things I knew had forgotten, and I learned other things too from it. Basically, you start with a lich gate, walk in, talks about lich gates and what they're for, and examples that you've seen and of interest, and then tour of the churchyard, stony things you can see in the churchyard, then round the outside of the church, and then through the inside of the church.
You have read it.
It's fascinating, and he isn't paying me to say this, but I would recommend this. If any of that is of any interest to you, get the books. They are well worth reading. They're very enjoyable. Anyway,
Great.
with no further ado,
Yeah.
please welcome Andrew Zielinski.
Well, I don't know what to say after that. Thank you ever so much for coming out. It's still a bit summer-like, isn't it? It's quite warm out there, so brilliant. I've cracked it. I'm on a tour for this book. I've got 22 events, and this is my 3rd, so I'll be doolally by the end of the month. People love going to churches, don't they? You know, people go to church, but I go to churches, and visiting these places has really got under my skin. There's about 12,000 churches of medieval origin in the country, and I've visited thousands of them. I'm on a perpetual busman's holiday. I work on churches all the time. I now write books about the things, and then I go and visit them. So when Stephen was showing me around here earlier. It was just a delight, especially finding out all about the graffiti. And I understand you've got Matthew Champion, who's a great academic when it comes to graffiti, coming to speak to you next year sometime. So look, book a date in the diary for that, because the graffiti here is so interesting and so odd. But we'll cover some of this in my talk. So I've been a stonemason for 35 years or so, but I've learnt to become a generalist. So I'm not a carver. If you want me to repair a wall, if you want me to conserve a grotesque figure or even recarve a grotesque figure, replace a lead roof, lock a hole in something, I can do that. But I'm, at my heart, a conservator. So I look to retain the maximum amount of original fabric, the stonework, in a church as is possible. And that's a peculiarly English way of going, or British way of going about it. In Europe, there's a much more robust approach to repairing churches. So, my father was Polish. You go to any Polish church, it's been completely restored. It's pristine. So you lose some of the subtlety and the folkloric aspect of our old churches. You hear me okay at the back? Seems, yeah, we're okay. Good, right. So this is a project. I live in Somerset, and these days we tend to work an hour's travelling time from Frome in Somerset, where we live. But when we were starting up, we were quite ambitious, and we just went everywhere. This is a church in Cornwall. The stone there obviously is unyielding granite and pretty unyielding slate. So there's not much sort of fine conservation work to do. And it's more about keeping the roof watertight, the walls pointed, just like simple, straightforward maintenance work. You can see our first whippet, Spike. He was an amazing character. He could climb a scaffold ladder. He would take a run up at it along the boards, and they'd just go, and then he would just stand next to me all day like that, in the way that whippets do, in a daydream. But it nearly led to his demise when a bitch on heat, when we were working in Malmesbury in Wiltshire, a bitch on heat walked past, and he jumped off the second lift of the scaffolding and really caused an enormous amount of expense. Yeah, he was all right in the end. He had metal plates and walked like a Star Wars machine. So you're getting the general idea as to what I'm about. This is a project that we recently finished. This is a church just outside of Bristol at Bitton, St Mary's at Bitton. And this had a really small congregation and wasn't really being used that much by the local community. So the PCC just made the decision to make it more inviting and more inclusive so that mother and toddler groups would use it more, as well as art societies and theatrical groups. But the first thing to be done was to clean the walls. And the walls are Norman with later piercings, and you can just see the black dirt all over the walls. So we used a latex system, which is the same system that was used at Notre Dame in Paris after the fire there. But we've tried to leave a little more patination on the walls. There's a certain chemical that we add to it that removes the pollutants. And I know Notre Dame has been criticised for being too clean, but the problem they had, of course, is that the lead roof was turned to dust by the flames. You know all about this, Terry. And so the walls were impregnated with this incredibly poisonous lead, so they had to go much deeper into the pores of the stonework. So we painted this latex product on, which is like Copydex. Remember Copydex? And it goes on as a white paste, and we'd wait 24 hours, and then we'd peel it off like sunburn over the entire church. And I put a video of this on Instagram, and isn't the world weird? It's had over 2 million views of just my colleague going, but it's the noise. Well, there'll be 2,070,000 more tonight. It's really, really odd. Anyway, very successful project. We just won a little award for that. with the Gloucestershire Churches group, and really, really satisfied. We found quite a lot of medieval paint adhered to the stonework as well. So, you know, before we painted this stuff over everything, we went round on our tower scaffolding just looking for medieval paint, because you know it will be there. And then we just painted our latex rubber around it. Anyway, enough about what we do. Why are churches in the places that they are? Very often there'll be, you know, the Anglo-Saxons built minister churches. I suspect this was a minister church. Important ford points or crossroads by Roman roads, that sort of thing. But in the western half of the country, churches would be positioned on a place that had always been deemed to be sacred to local people. So that could be a holy well, for example, a standing stone, an ancient yew tree. You'll know what I mean. So this is, does anyone know where this is? Oh my goodness me, you've got to go here. This is Holywell, originally named Holywell, in North Wales. And this is a royal shrine. And there's a sacred spring that rises at this spot here, and then it goes into this swimming pool where, you know, if you've got an ache or a pain or an ailment, you pay the nuns that run this place, I think 74p, and it hasn't gone up due to inflation, and you can go in. I've swum in there, and yeah, it's icily cold. It's icily cold, but it's a wonderfully atmospheric place. There are crutches hanging from the walls where people have taken the waters and you know, been relieved of their ailments. And there's graffiti all over the walls where people have, you know, believed that the waters have really helped them along. It's the most wonderful place, and it's, you know, very few people go there because it's, you know, but the layers of history here are so deep and so wonderful. It's one of my favourite places in Britain. I wouldn't go swimming there every time, but, you know, I'm glad I did it once. So holy wells, you know, holy wells very important throughout Europe, especially important in what you might call the Celtic world. This is very much in the Celtic world in a part of Wales. And standing stones as well. But of course, standing stones would have been a useful quarry, if you like, so they would have been demolished. This is a Rudston in the East Riding of Yorkshire. And it's incredible to me that this stone has survived so close to the chancel, the holiest part of the church. So obviously it was protected by the local people in some way. They didn't want that to be knocked down to make building stone, to build their church. And the name of the village gives a clue as to the importance of this thing, because Rud comes from rood, which is the Anglo-Saxon for cross, so this is the cross stone. Remember that rood and rud word, because I'm going to keep repeating that through the next 4 hours. That worked. You're paying attention. You see this cap at the top? So I suspect there's a socket. I've long suspected there was a socket in there that the missionaries who came to this place that converted this stone to the Christian faith, they would have got a local mason or capable person to cut a socket to receive a cross. But of course it's got this nice lead hat on the top, hasn't it? So unless I go there with a long ladder and take it off, I'm never going to see. But I was on Instagram again the other day, and I saw this. It's a menhir, a standing stone in Brittany. So that's pretty much how I'd always imagined the Rudston stone had looked. And there is indeed one that's been venerated as long as the standing stone at Rudston. Now, the first churches would have been timber structures, and they would have been established in the western part of the country in these circular enclosures called clans. You know, all Welsh villages are clans something or other, aren't they? This is a Llangel, I can't say that. Llangenin Old Church, it's near Conwy. I can't say that, but I'm going to do my party piece now because I had to read my audio book, and I had to learn how to say, Llanfaith Pil Gwyngyth. Oh yeah, here we go. Llanfaith Pil Gwyngyth, Gerith in Drobeth, Llantai Silia Gogogoch. Yay. Oh, thank you. It took a lot of sessions in the bath, talking to myself, repeating that aspect. So where you see these circular or oval enclosures, you can be guaranteed that this will be a very early site where Christianity was implanted in the local landscape. Very often the church will be much later. As I say, the first churches were single-celled structures. This is a church at Temple Cronan in the Burren in County Clare. That's our kid Violet. Lucky thing, we would say to her, do you want to go, looking at churches? Do you want to go to Ireland looking at, saint shrines? And she goes, yeah, all right. And she's really up for it. She's left the country now, so she lives in Austria. But anyway, but I'd taken her to see this place. So this is, as I say, Temple Cronan. Early churches are known as temples in Ireland. But I'd taken her to see this shrine. I don't know if you can see that. It's what they call a tent shrine. So it's like a old-fashioned tent that's got the saint in it. So Cronan himself is in there. And local people come up and they bring little shells and coins, little devotional things, little things to give him, flowers from the surrounding fields. And you look in the gap at the top, this is like several hundred years old, it's a bit weather-beaten. It's just two slabs of limestone led against each other. And I just love the idea that he's been weighed down over the centuries by all these coins and flowers and shells and little devotional offerings by local people. The churches in Ireland could be incredible, but Oliver Cromwell, what an evil man. Good in some ways, but anyway, completely destroyed the Catholic culture up to a point in Ireland. Unusually, for an early medieval site like this, it doesn't have a circular enclosure. But what is interesting is that the stone that this church was built from, you can see the quarry is still there. So I think this probably was always a stone structure. So these single-celled churches that have been established by a missionary would have had a cross planted outside. This is at Ruthwell near Dumfries. And I used to get sent here, not as a penance, but my mum's cousins had a farm nearby. And at the end of the working day, I'd be worked half to death. At the end of the working day, my uncle would say, right, what are we going to see today? We're going to see Robert the Bruce's cave, or a Roman signal station ruin, or the Viking runes at the Ruthwell High Cross. Viking runes, I like the sound of that. So I was about 8 or 9, something like that, and I remember going into this church. This church is purpose-built around this cross. It's 8th century masterpiece of art. And what's so interesting about it is that it's so cosmopolitan. All of the art on display here is very Mediterranean in origin. It's got this wonderful vine work that comes up the side. As I am the vine and you are the branches. The way that the images of Christ have been cut is very Mediterranean. And there's this Latin script around the side as well. But it has these runes. And these runes are on the side here. And here are the runes running up. Those of you in the front row, can anyone here read Anglo-Saxon runes? Yeah, exactly. There's always one. Come on. No, okay. You've let me down. Okay. So I've written down what this says. And this says, this is the introduction of a poem called The Dream of the Rood. And it tells the story of Christ's suffering from the point of view of the tree that was cut down that Christ was nailed to. But it's interpreting it as if Christ is an Anglo-Saxon thane who's dying for his people. And it's the earliest recorded, written down poem in the English language. And it's not in a manuscript, it's in the old red sandstone of Dumfriesshire. And I find that so completely mind-blowing. Anyway, You're all going to have a lesson in Anglo-Saxon runes, not Viking runes. Uncle John was wrong. And you can see this says Christ was on the cross. That so says Christ, doesn't it? Christ was on the rood. So we've got this rood word creeping in again. But it's a wonderful thing. And yeah, I talked too much about it, sorry. So every one of our churches would have had a cross outside. They would have been timber originally, and then over time they became stone. As I say, the first churches were of timber exclusively, especially in this. Are we north or south of the Danelaw here? South, thank you, yeah. Yeah, the place names seem quite sort of Saxony. But the oldest timber church in the entire world is this one here, and it's in Essex. It's at Bradwell, juxta Ongar. No, that's Bradwell, isn't it? Sorry, yeah, that's at Greenstead, juxta Ongar. Getting slide confusion there. And these walls are made from halved logs. And it's amazing that you'd think that the oldest church in the world would be in some Romanian mountain glade or something like that, or up a fjord. But no, it's in Essex. Amazing. But I think this is the earliest, the church on the... So this is about the year 1000, maybe a pinch earlier. It was complete until the Victorian restorers came in and restored it in their own eyes. They had their own idea as to what a Saxon church should look like, and they restored it. So much was lost. But the bulk of the walling is, these Saxon halved logs. But this is the church on the right. It's also in Essex. This is Bradwell-on-Sea. Anyway, my brain's gone. It's on Bradwell, on the Essex coast, by the nuclear power station. And this is built exclusively, pretty much, from Roman material, from the fort that it straddles the wall of a Roman fort. It's St. Peter's on the wall. And this is I think, probably the last Roman building to be built in Britain, 6th century. And the walls have been plastered, and the stonework and the flint that the walls are built from have been bedded down in this material called opus signinum, which was like the sort of European Union standard of mortar. So you could use that. They used opus signinum to build bridges, aqueducts, harbour works, because it's set underwater. So you go to Syria, you go to Pompeii, and you find this particular mortar mix. And you find it here at Bradwell-on-Sea. And then that technology just disappeared. It completely disappeared in Britain. Maybe it pops up a bit at Jarrow, but Jarrow, up in the northeast, was built by masons from France, so they maybe brought that technology back. So the earliest timber spire, I thought you'd like to see this, so as we're under such a magnificent spire here, the earliest timber spire in the country, and probably Europe, is this one here. This is at Sompting in Sussex. And this is a Rhenish helm spire. And the framework of this whole design, which is quite peculiar, it's not very English at all, it's completely original and in situ. All of the timbers are where the joints connect and intersect have got Roman numerals cut into them so that it can all be put together. An absolutely wonderful place. And they think that St. Benet's in Cambridge also had a Rhenish helm type roof. We had a really nice holiday in Dusseldorf a couple of years ago, and there was don't laugh at me, there was a swimming pool on the roof of our hotel, and I was like in this swimming pool looking out at Dusseldorf, which had been pretty flattened during the war, but you just see all these roofs, all these Rhenish helm, because it's on the River Rhine, isn't it? All these church spire roofs. There you go. This is the earliest church that I've worked on. This is St. Lawrence's in Bradford-on-Avon in Wiltshire. And what's so interesting about this is that this is the first known church to have been built from scratch. There's no Roman material being used in this at all. And when we were unpicking the corner of the porticus here, this like porch-like extension, you pulled the stone out, and it like really smelt inside. I thought, what's going on here? It smelled really funky. And started scraping away all the mortar and the spider's webs and all that. And there wasn't mortar. How this was built is that they extracted stone from the quarry behind, where I'd taken this photo, and they glued the stones together with clay they just dug out the local riverbed. This is my home patch, and we've worked on the canal, the Kennet and Avon Canal here. We've worked on the Packhorse Bridge of the early 14th century, and they've all used this same technology. Even in the canal, where the bridges and the bridge abutments are all glued together with just clay. And that technology has kept this place alive, really. That's one of my favourite churches. Of course, just down the road in Wing, you have another spectacular Anglo-Saxon church with its very intriguing crypt. I don't know is there anyone here involved with this church? Because it's one of the ones. I suspect there was an important relic held underneath, and there's like you can walk around the central area, you can go down the steps, walk around the central area, and you'd have been able to exit from another. So I think this would have been a point of pilgrimage underneath the chancel. So you can just see the entrance here where I took this. I've not been in there because it's always locked. But it's wonderful inside. And it's a beautiful confection of different types of stone, just put together. Different accretions of age and time. So this is what it looks like on the outside. So again, this is about the year 1000 again. This is a big minster church, This was at a very important nodal point in the landscape, with a bridge crossing over the river. And this is how the church in Bradford-on-Avon looks by comparison. Very narrow, very tall. I think it had a slightly different use. I think it had a shrine in it, but there's nowhere for pilgrims to come round. So there's lots of questions. I'm particularly into these Anglo-Saxon churches because they're trying to tell a story and we don't really understand what that story is. This is my favourite church in the whole of the British Isles. This is St Mary and St David's at Kilpeck in Herefordshire. So you've gone from these single-cell mission churches to two-cell churches, and then you have an extension called an apse on the end. So this is a Norman church of the 1150s. Just go back to Wing. And look, you can see we've got an apse at Wing as well. But it's a bit more sort of Byzantine in form. It's a bit more interesting, this Saxon apse. But the joy of this place is the carving. And again, it's carved out of this incredibly dense old red sandstone. And the individual who carved this doorway, it's a pity you can't see it close up. You've just got to go there for a holiday if you don't know it. They've introduced Islamic themes, they've introduced Scandinavian themes, Norman themes. The Anglo-Saxons are very present in this. Basically, all of the art forms of Europe at that time are incorporated into this doorway, and it's in incredible condition. Look, it's got these weird serpent-like creatures. It could be on the prow of a Viking longship on either end. But it's more famous for its creatures that are affixed to the outside as corbels. So this is the beginning of the introduction of sculptured forms and animals to the outside of our churches. So it begins here. It's got a really famous Sheila na gig. It's really pornographic, but delightful figure. That if I'm giving a talk in a church hall, I show people. But when I'm in a church, I don't think it's quite right. But there are Sheila na gigs to be seen in churches all over the place. There are also Sean-Nagigs to be seen, if you know what I mean, in very many churches. But I thought it was maybe a bit spicy for here, because I didn't know how open-minded you all were. Anyway, you can look up this Sheila Nagig if you don't know her at Kilpeck. But of course, round here, where's this? Someone's got to tell me because I've forgotten. It's yeah, I've completely forgotten where it is. Anyway, yeah, it's down the road. It's coming to me in a minute. Anyway, I've got too many churches in my head. But again, you can see this Norman chevron work and these beautiful beak heads like you have around the doorway here. Oh, what's it called? Is it called Shelton or something like that? Stukely, thank you. Stukely. Yeah, it's always a test. But it's just chock full of all these Romanesque Norman forms. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. If you want to see pretty much as near a complete Norman church as it's possible to see, you need to go to Stukely or Kilpeck. But Kilpeck's a different order of scale. It's smaller, but it's got more interesting carving. This carving's pretty good. Anyway, so you transition from the Romanesque, the round-headed arches of the Romanesque world into the Gothic in the early 13th century, heavily influenced by Islam, with flying buttresses, the shapes of window tracery. This has come from the Islamic world. And where I trained at Salisbury, I was working at the point of transition from the octagonal base of the spire to the square plan of the tower. And how do you transfer that octagon onto a square? Well, you put arches in the corner. They're called squinches. And that's a purely Islamic device because it derives from the dome architecture of Islam. So I just love this constant exchange of knowledge as a consequence of the Crusades, unfortunately. But something I always like to convey. What a great debt we do owe to the Islamic world for what you might think of purely a purely sort of Northern European concept. Here's a fairly typical day at work. This is our lockdown project, where Boris Johnson locked down the country, and we just worked on this church on our own because the architect couldn't come out or anything. So it was really great. We had a Christmas party in there, which the vicar was cool about. Well, it wasn't exactly a party. We just sat around eating food and drinking, but as we couldn't go out. But here's one of these creatures. I've got a really good theory about what they're for. So, your wonderful church is covered in grotesque figures. We call them hunky punks in Somerset. These are some of the figures from this particular church at Hemmington that we're working on. And my idea is that they are there. They're always around the windows or around doorways, on the corners of the church, strategic points of entrance into the church. And I think they're to ward off spirits that were determined to enter the church with evil intent. I mean, they don't look that scary, do they? Oh, not that one. There we go. But look at the size of that. I mean, they are really, you see them from the ground, they don't look that big. But she's a whopper, but she doesn't look very scary, does she? But if you only knew the horrible truth. I mean, come on, she's even wearing a crown. Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, definitely designed to ward off spirits from entering the church with evil intent. So here, we didn't have to do much to her, but she was getting a bit like me, getting a bit threadbare on top. Freeze-thaw action and water damage was causing water to pool in her head, so we made this nice lead hat for her, slightly beat it into place, and she's good to go for another 600 years, graffiti. So this is not far. This is at Whitchurch. I can remember this church. This is at Whitchurch on the left. And again, medieval people were completely obsessed with the idea of demons getting into their where they lived, where they worshipped, where they worked, where they farmed. And you have these devices called daisy wheels. I'm not going to focus too much on them because you've got Matthew Champion coming to talk to you. But if you go and look at the daisy wheels around here and on these columns, it's just astonishing. And the idea with these, as I understand it, is that because demons are a bit thick, if they do break into the church, you'll very often find these patterns opposite the door. They'll break into the church, they'll schmooze in, and then they'll see this daisy wheel pattern. You're all going to go and have a look at them around there, identify them afterwards, I'm sure. You see this daisy wheel pattern, and they get drawn into it, and because it's never ending, they're trapped in there forever. That's the theory. It's the same here on the bottom left-hand side, the Solomonic knot. Again, you find loads of willies in churches. Willies are every. I don't know if there are any here, but I would say about half the medieval churches worked on there. You will find an organ of some sort. The same idea. This Whitchurch is the same thing. The demon gets in. This is just opposite the doorway. Look at the density of these crucifixes, and because this is a really soft stone, a chalk clunch, you can just easily scratch these designs into the stonework. And again, where you have these clusters of crosses, the demon gets drawn into them, and they're caught in there forever. So I wouldn't hang around them for too long, just in case, But it seems a bit odd to me that people are relying on folk magic instead of, invoking the saints and the cult of the Virgin. Here's another example. So this is a project on the same church with the grotesque figures. This is a feature called a piscina, and this is where the sacred vessels of the Eucharist are washed. Because if you've literally got the blood and the body of Christ in that vessel, you have to dispose of those contents respectfully and in the right way. And in these little basins, you have a little hole, and the hole goes down a pipe. This pipe's called a sacrarium. It's always built into the stonework, and that discharges under the altar. And my colleague Pete said, what's in that hole? And he saw this thing, right? It's gold lozenge. We're on to something here. And he's got one of these drain, Pete's van's he's got every sort of tool under the sun. He's got one of these drain cleaning things, these flexible bits of metal. So he pulled that out and then just carried on. It was just full of glass and bent pins. You go to a holy well in Cornwall, and there'll be, you hear stories of people putting bent pins in there for eye conditions, There's something like that going on. Screws, musket balls, buttons, tokens, coins, and loads of pre-Reformation glass that have been cut to size to put in that hole. So what on earth are they trying to keep out or keep in? I don't know. So we just photographed everything and put it all back in the order it came out, because you don't want to mess with that juju, do you? Every single piscina I've had a look in has got something in it like that. What's going on? So this is folk magic. This isn't Christianity. In the most sacred part of the church. Anyway, this gold lozenge, so people did all this stuff. It fell out of use. I think the latest thing we could date was like the 17th century. And the gold lozenge, it's got a likeness of, I'm turning it around. Why am I doing that? It's got a likeness of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is a Mexican saint, I think. Anyway, that Middle American part of the world. It's the most important saint in Central America. And it's gold-painted plastic. So someone's come from Mexico, someone's come from South America, they've gone to this church literally in the middle of nowhere in rural Somerset and gone, yeah, I know, there's the piscina, and they just put that in as the topmost devotion. But I reckon we could probably follow this person on their holiday around Britain, by looking for the gold lozenges. Anyway, there's a doctorate in that, if anyone fancies it. It's a bit late in the day for me. But this invocation of folk magic or the saints, whatever it is, doesn't always work. So this is, well, maybe it does in this case, actually. This is a project of ours in Wiltshire. I can't say where it is because it was a bit of an iffy insurance claim by the vicar. But what had happened, it was an act of God, of course. Just keep it in the room. It was an act of God. But these, they got some builders in to put some plate glass doors in here, and all this had dropped by about 5 millimeters. And there was a bit of a windy storm, and the window blew out. But there was a mother and toddlers group taking place inside, and you would all know about this if it had gone the other way. So everything blew out. So we're on friendly terms with the architect. He said, "Can you come in? We've got a window blown out." And I thought it was going to be a window, not a rose window. So we got in and we put formwork up to shore up what was left. We collected all the glass and all the stonework that we could. You can see it on the left, going back up. It's about half of it was new stone, but we managed to salvage the rest. And there it is on the right, all finished. And the gap, the gap that had opened up, all filled with slate and packed to the nth degree. So maybe all this, like I say, folk magic or faith in certain things, did pay off here. In my book, I refer to this as Holmstoke Church, which I haven't quite made it up. I've taken it from a Thomas Hardy novel. And I get quite a few emails from people saying, "I'm going around to your churches, but where on earth is Holmstoke? I can only find a reference to it." And so I send them on a wild goose chase around the Dorset Heaths. I'll have a sip. Look at you all for a minute. So, one of the reasons I wrote my book is I was constantly encountering remnants of the great art and sculpture and architecture that existed before the Reformation. The Reformation, you could say, began in 1539 with the dissolution of the monasteries. And it's always, people generally think that Henry VIII is solely responsible for the destruction of church art that we see around. But that's not really the case. It's his son Edward, the boy king. And it was his evil set of advisors that gave him the wrong advice. Archbishop Cranmer here thought that the Pope was the Antichrist. And in this this propaganda piece, you can see Henry on his deathbed passing on the baton of the reform, the church needs, the reform of the church needs to continue, and Edward's not looking too pleased about it. Anyway, so all his advisors were about let's change the nature of faith in this country, and one of the injunction of 1547 that idols and church art must be smashed, shrines must be destroyed, and here you can see a view out of a window of a churchyard cross being pulled down, statuary being destroyed. The church is just a pile of a ruined heap behind it, and there are flames where the statuary and the sculpture was just being burnt. We're going to see some survivors in a minute. But what did survive the Reformation? Well, fonts always survived the Reformation, because it doesn't matter. So if you're a Christian, you need to have a font. And around here, you're so lucky because you've got these Aylesbury fonts that are copies of chalices that they used to make in the Aylesbury area. These are all Norman, similar age to your wonderful font here, which I think is probably carved from a single piece of stone. It's a proper project, that. But it's very similar to fonts that you see in Cornwall, where you have this sort of thick base that's supporting the basin. Anyway, the Aylesbury fonts, I think there's 22 of them, and they are generally within a few miles of the Icknield Way. So you can have a really nice day out, just if the churches are open, of course, getting to know your wonderful Aylesbury fonts. There's a few in Bedfordshire, there's a few in Northamptonshire as well. But there's a very sophisticated school of carving at work in the 1150s to create all of these. Very often out of chalk clunch, Tottenham, you know, this stuff, which is really easy to carve, so you can get some nice decorative forms into them. So shrines were completely destroyed. Every shrine in the country, apart from that of Edward the Confessor in Westminster Abbey. And this one here on the right, for some reason, this is the same, this contains the bones of St. White in Whitchurch Canonicorum in Dorset. And I think she's probably the most potent of our native saints, because she's had the power to survive, you know. She's hanging on in there. And these holes are where, if you've got an ailment, you put your sore elbow or your head or your leg or whatever, and request an intercession from the saint. A very powerful and sacred place. You know, I don't really have a particular faith, but you can't not go here and not be moved, I have to say. The shrine on the left pretty much sums up what I was trying to say with that propaganda picture, is that all shrines were destroyed, and the elements of those shrines were placed in the walls of the church, or the enclosing walls, or the actual church wall itself. This is at Pennant Malangal in central Wales, and St. Malangal, she was thought to lie in the apse, and when they excavated the apse, they found the bones, where they always said they would be the bones of a young woman, they found the bones of a young woman that matched the description of the saint. So they've put her bones back in the shrine, which gives me a bit of a shiver, to be honest, and covered her in a lovely silk covering. And the bits that are missing, they've formed out of concrete in quite a creative way. So you can see the difference between the original Norman shrine. This is the only Norman shrine to have sort of survived in any form in the whole of the country. Lovely spot in the middle of the mountains. Not many people go there. You shoot lots of pheasants around there. So you're in for a friendly welcome. So I think this chap here, this is Jesse. This is the father of King David and the ultimate ancestor of Mary. So he's always depicted on his side like this, and you can see this great vine coming from his midriff. Sometimes it's closer to his midriff, if you know what I mean, than depicted here. And the family tree of Mary's family springs from him. Very often depictions of him, that there'll be him carved in stone beneath, and then there'll be a stained glass window, stained glass windows that show the Holy Family. Dorchester-on-Thames has got a window just like that. But anyway, he's about the size of a rhinoceros. He's absolutely gigantic. And he's carved from a single piece of oak in the 1470s. There's still bits of paint adhering to him. But how is he not burnt? Why did they not just lift him outside and set fire to him? He's an absolute wonder. This is at Abergavenny. So Wales is a real stronghold for depictions of Jesse. Here he is here in St Dyfnogs in Denbighshire. And the locals refer to him as Jesse on the telephone, which I think is rather nice. But look, it just gives you an idea of how colourful. This is about 15, this is a bit later, it's about 1520, just before the Reformation. It gives you an understanding as to how colourful the churches were at that time. Depictions of Christ were really, every church would have had them everywhere. They were all destroyed or painted over. This likeness on the left is from Mercer's Hall Chapel in the City of London. And I went there on a lunch with someone, and he said, "Would you like to see a sculpture of Christ?" Oh, yeah, okay. Didn't really think much of it. He took me in, and there's a life-size depiction of Christ at the point of deposition from the cross. And this has been carved by a Flemish master or some, an absolute genius. You can see the veins in his arms. It's such a one, but no one really knows about it because he's closed away in this private chapel of a livery company. This was destroyed during the Reformation and then flipped over. But the person who was sent, or the crew who was sent to destroy it, I mean, after all, they were Christians, weren't they? They couldn't bring themselves to smash off his face, so they've left his face and just flipped him over. But I was giving a talk last autumn, and there was this lady came up to me from the audience at the end, and she'd been to see this when it had been uncovered after the Blitz in 1947 when they cleared the chapel. And she said it was covered in colour and paintwork. And at some unknown point, we've scrubbed it all off. So it's just like that now, you know, incredible. So I think she's probably the only person who knew that, you know. Over the point of transition into the chancel, there would always have been an image of Christ. A rood, here we go again. So here we're still lucky enough to have a screen, a rood screen. But as I say, of the 12,000 churches of medieval origin, not a single image of Christ that would have been that would have hung over the chancel arch survives. There's just little scraps, the occasional foot or a head. Apart from your screen here, this is my favourite screen in the whole world. This is at St Helens in Ranworth in Norfolk. It's the quality of the carved woodwork and the painted quality of the saints that are depicted there. And in the bottom right-hand corner is a saint that you will see in many, many rood screens. You can see here she's holding a tooth with some pliers. This is St Apollonia, and she was the patron saint of dentists. She was tortured to death by having all her teeth drawn. Any medieval church that's got a depiction of her, you will know that everyone in the parish who had toothache would have come to her to request an intercession. And you can very often see just where they've rubbed their faces up on this, you know, on the artwork. Just connects you with these people immediately, you know, and their ailments. So yeah, next time you're in the Norfolk Broads, go and check out the images of St Apollonia. Over the arch here, I mean, there may well still be a depiction here, I don't know. There may be a depiction of the Day of Judgment. This is at St Thomas's in Salisbury. This is one of the best. And this is a church I've worked on quite a lot, so I know this well. And these depictions of the Day of Judgment are always quite formulaic. Christ is sat on a rainbow. This is not a merciful Christ. This is a Christ in judgment. And the doomed are going to hell with this great, you know, I could just do a talk about this really because it's so entertaining. Like the way medieval people depicted hell and hell's mouth and all the demons, and obviously all those that are being saved are going to meet St Peter at the old pearly gates. Anyway, we're nearly done, so you can all wake up. So here we go. This is the. I think you had a talk here from someone last year. Was that this year or not? A year ago. Yeah, a year ago. So this is the tomb and chantry chapel of Alice de la Pole. So monuments to important people generally survived the Reformation because, you know, they were protected. They weren't controversial. And this is one of the best. I show this in every slide, every talk that I give, because I think this is such a marvellous piece of work. Here she is, carved from a single piece of Derbyshire alabaster. She would have been painted originally. The paint's been scrubbed off. But the quality of the carving is amazing. Check out her belt and her prayer beads going down the side, and the gigantic feet of the angels that are supporting her, her cushion. So that's a depiction of her in life. This is what they call a double-decker, a cadaver tomb. And below, beautiful folds there. I mean, it's got the lot. Anyway, there she is in death. And she's staring up. She's depicted in death. Her eyes are open. There's a bit of paint left, and she's just staring at an Annunciation scene painted onto the ceiling. You could just see the top of her burial shroud. Something I only learnt the other day was that the reason ghosts are like ghostly is because people are always buried in shrouds, like a sheet. So they'd always go like that, you know, which I didn't know till recently. Yeah, look, I'm running out of steam. What was I going to talk about? So I could talk about stained glass, but I won't. Maybe I'll come back one day. Talk about stained glass and doom paintings. But I just want to finish up on something I think is really funny that I've noticed that no one else has. Is a bit of toilet humour as well, so I'm really sorry about this. But it's how many commodes, how many commodes you encounter in medieval stained glass. You can see this one here. This is the local benefactor paying someone who's giving alms to the sick with the commode there. Here's another one on the left-hand side. So this is Adam. He's been given seeds by his son Seth from the tree of life, from the apple tree. That famous apple tree behind him here. Yeah. Anyway, you could just see so much about run-of-the-mill domestic life in these places. Anyway, last slide. I always want to emphasize that churchyards and churches themselves are havens for the natural world. In their churchyards, which have never been ploughed or sprayed. So the ecology of a churchyard will reflect what was happening in our parishes before, you know, the intensive nature of agriculture took hold. And the actual buildings themselves. I love this as a summary. This is at the Roslin Chapel, just south of Edinburgh, famous for Dan Brown. And the pinnacles have got these hollows inside and little flowers that are designed to let bees in and out. You can never harvest the bees. They're built into these stone pinnacles, but they're just there to celebrate the relationship between us and them. Anyway, God, that felt longer than normal. Thank you very much for coming. All right, goodbye, my book at the end. Oh, it is the end. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Andrew. There's a short opportunity to ask questions, and after that, Andrew will be over there trying to serve you copies of his books. He's there because you've got to go past and get out, so be careful.
Clever, yeah.
Can I ask the first question?
Please, yeah.
You spoke about the influence of Islamic masonry techniques. Can you talk a little bit about how they came to get here, or how you think they came to get here, please?
Yep. Oh, yes, I shall do that. Went on this trip to Durham Cathedral, and the Clerk of Works there. So Durham's really important. It's a Romanesque, it's a Norman building. So it was built right at the time of the First and Second Crusade. And it's a Norman building, but it's got flying buttresses and what you call groin vaults. And there's a long academics. There's nothing on paper, but it just appeared, this technology appeared out of nowhere. And it appeared before the sort of first Gothic church got going in Paris. My brain's gone. So that was like 50 years before. What church is it, Claire? Oh, right, okay. That's a classic example from my wife. Yeah, answer from my wife. What was the Gothic church in Paris? Saint-Denis. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Saint-Denis in Paris was the first set-piece Gothic church. Pointed windows, flying buttresses, groin vaults. But this appeared like 50 years before in Durham. And the only way this could have just appeared is by someone coming along who understood this form of engineering and architecture. And that had to be someone who'd come from the Arabic world, because this form of architecture was very common. And there's a church near me in Devizes, which again has exactly the same. It's really early, it's got groin vaults, but the windows are getting a bit pointed. So the pointed window is an Islamic concept. Those of you who have been to Cordoba and looked at the tracery in the windows in there, it's just, you can really see it at work. So I've become really interested in this. And I went on this great expedition to Iran with my brother-in-law, just looking at early Islamic architecture, looking at all this fantastic dome and bridge architecture. And you can really see that, you know, there's all these early Gothic churches are basically middle Islamic forms as well.
So do you think then that masons from the Middle East came to Western Europe and eventually found their way
Yeah.
and taught local masons?
I think so, yeah. Now, there are two accounts of people with Islamic names working on Gothic cathedrals. One's in Wales. You know, somewhere really unexpected in Wales. And this guy's got such a, you know, he completely was a Moor who'd been brought over. Maybe from Spain, you know, if you've been to St Mary Redcliffe Church in Bristol and you see the north porch doorway, that was carved in about 1430. And there's not a more Islamic, more Moorish, yeah, thank you. But of course, Bristol being Bristol, it's on the trade links to Spain, so there just would have been a to and a fro. And you can see it in Malmesbury Abbey as well. It's just, yeah, it's definitely a thing. Did I answer that?
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Oh, that's good. Hello. Yeah. Oh, well, they keep changing. As I keep, the book after next is on cathedrals, and I'm constantly compiling. So I went to Ely for the first time last autumn, and that rather blew us away. But last year I also went to St Magnus's in Kirkwall in Orkney, which it's worth travelling all the way up there just to see that place, you know. But I think my current favourite is Glasgow Cathedral, which I've like, Glasgow Cathedral, how, you know, don't really think there's much medieval stuff going on there, but it's like Glasgow Cathedral's just on this incredibly prominent site. It's got this crazy spire, but that's like Victorian, so we discount the spire. But the shrine, as you go down to where St Mungo, where the shrine of St Mungo is, oh my goodness me, it's so thrilling. You know, you can really understand the mindset of pilgrims as they're going around that place. Yeah. So yeah, I think they're my current top three. So I mean, I trained at Salisbury, but Salisbury's a bit boring, really. It's just one type of thing, repeated. I mean, it's clever, but oh, and well, anyway, yeah, okay. There you go. There's three unusual ones. Yeah.
There's a question over here. Yes, sir.
Hello.
When you're restoring in church, how do you go about deciding what to keep as original and what needs to be replaced?
That's a good question, isn't it? Yeah. Well, the architect does all the work. The architect makes the decision, and I agree with them. Yeah. But now I'm noticing that architects are much younger than me, so it's more. So I would follow around the architect, going, but now I'm a senior person, nearly being 60. You know, there's a dialogue. So, my goodness me, when you're confronted with a piece of stone, you've got to think of like, how long is it going to be till the scaffolding goes up next? Is this piece of stone or this carving or this drip mould going to last long enough? Is it going to last another 100 years? If it's not, if it's a weathering, so if it's a detail designed to shed water, we always replace that. If it's not, if it's more sculptural or it's just like flat walling stone, which we would use lime mortars to repair these in situ. So it's like dentistry, I guess, with that. You know, if there's a cavity, we would cut out all the decay, and then we would, instead of a mercury filling, we would use lime mortar to fill that hole. Whereas, as I said earlier, in Europe, they would take out the whole stone. And there are some cathedrals around Britain that have a more robust approach like that. They would replace the whole stone. So Gloucester has a less conservative approach than some others. Salisbury was all about conserving everything, which I'm not entirely sure was the right way, but yeah. So yeah, that's a sort of answer, isn't it? Thank you. Yeah.
Any further questions? Terry?
When we were repairing this church, we took quite a conservative attitude towards it, and I don't regret it, looking back over the years. For example, the roof you're looking at in the chancel of the church is not keeping out the rain. That roof was very badly damaged by the fire, as were the figures on it. But we repaired the figures the way they were, and we built a new roof above it. So when you go outside, you see the shape of the roof is a different shape from the one inside. And we've done that in quite a lot of places around the church. Another thing we've done, which probably strike a chord with you, is we've not re-lime washed the walls. During the Reformation, anything that snapped or stacked of papers and was painted over, and the whole church was covered in a white lime wash. They did the same at Wing Church.
Yeah.
We haven't done that, and we've gradually let it wear off. And the amount of graffiti in this church is really quite extraordinary. And the conclusion we came to is that the graffiti reflects the religion of the ordinary person. We know a lot about the history of the church and the history of the bishops and the great and the good, but we don't know what the individual person believes. And it's now beginning to come apart through the marks on the wall. And we had a patron saint of toothache in this church.
Did you? Right.
And there was an altar just round the back of here. And there was a patron saint of toothache and a patron saint of stomachache. The two altars lit to either of them. And that's why there's so much graffiti on that pillar, that side.
Right. Okay.
You know, people were bringing their stomachache and their toothache and all the problems that they have in those days. And while they were there, people would scratch witches' marks and other marks on the walls, which are there for you to see, which are indications for anybody who's up to no good to keep away from the church. This is a special place. And again, we found a glass inside some of the windows. There's no medieval glass in this church. We do know that Cromwell's army went round and shot some of the windows, because we found a musket shot. But we've kept the glass that we found, and we've constructed it into a small window which has gone into a room at the top of the church here. So we've kept it rather than right away. So we've tried to conserve the history of the building.
Yeah.
Because we're very proud of the history of this building. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
When you look back over the last many thousand years.
Well,
Sorry,
yeah, no, but it's only here because of you. You know, your endeavours and Rosemary's endeavours, I understand. You know, just drawing together and committing yourself to this. So, you know, fair play. I mean, it's amazing seeing your likeness at the end of the at the end of the church. I vaguely recognise you. You were younger then, though, weren't you?
I'll just say now, because Andrew's alluded to it in his talk, Mary's just spoken about it. We've arranged a talk for October the 15th next year about medieval graffiti with particular reference to here. And it's to be given by Matt Champion, who is a published author, if not the foremost, certainly one of the foremost scholars on that subject in the country today. He will be here October the 15th next year for next year's lecture. You're obviously very welcome. Are there any further questions?
That's great. Yeah, yeah.
Right, well, let me just say formally and finally, thank you very much, Andrew, for a very interesting talk. We show our appreciation in the usual way, and on your way out, do think about these books. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, talking's hard work, isn't it? He's going to lie down now.